Hello and welcome to the live presentation of the English edition of the Neurogram Consultant tool. We did the Dutch edition, I think, a couple of weeks ago, but now there's also an English translation, and I'm going to present it to you. So, what is the neurogram? Well, the neurogram is inspired by the Enneagram, but then I use cybernetic Big Five theory, which is the neuroscientific theory of the Big Five personality system, and I use that to make it scientifically sound to use the patterns that are found within the Enneagram. And that works quite well because I teach it both at the VU University of Amsterdam as the Erasmus University of Rotterdam. And I've built a software tool to actually help you determine what kind of brain type it is. Normally, you would say the personality type of persons, but in reality, there is no such thing as personality. Instead, we have a brain type. Just in the same way that your body has a different type than the mind body, your brain, if we would scan your brain, would also have a different type than my brain, unless we have the same brain type, of course. And this is all based on neuroscience. For instance, my brain has a lot more dopamine sensitive brain cells than an average person, and that you can see that in my behaviors. So without further ado, let's introduce the tool, and let's make sure that you can see it hopefully quite well. Let me enlarge it a bit. So that you can see there is the tool has different parts. The first part is determining a brain time of a single person. I am going to demonstrate it now. I have here the list. This is what we do in live training sessions or workshops, team building workshops, where people, well, in a kind of very funny stand-up comedy-like setting where we play games and then determine what kind of brain type people have. And to start, we start with an initial estimation. This is basically to measure how much people already know of their own personality or their brain type. And so in this case, the guy that I'm doing has filled in 1, 10, 10, 5, 15, 5, 10, 20, and even 25. So the next section is actually a questionnaire of 45 questions, 5 questions per type. And the only thing you have to do is actually fill in the answers. So he has 0 correct answers at the perfectionist, 3 at the helper, 1 at successful worker, 2 at the romantic, but 5 at the analyst. And you can already see immediately then the analyst is coming up quite strongly in the graph. 1 and then a 4 for the hedonist, 2, 0. But so far, only the analyst seems to be the one that this system is going for. But you can see it's actually the number 3 that he thought of himself. So again, interesting. Here we enter to the third phase. It's actually these brain types, these 9 brain types are clustered in 3 different groups. And then we ask people how much they recognize of each group. So he has 1, 0, 1, 0, 3. Yeah, this has to be. So then we get 3, 2, 2, 1, 2. And you can see the percentage that he has an analyst brain now, well, it was 3%, is now 35%. So we're going in the right direction. The same goes for stress and relaxation behaviors. So depending on your brain type, you deal different with stress and with relaxation. In times of stress, the negative side of your behavior comes about, whereas in the times of relaxation, the positive behaviors come to the light. And again, we can ask people how much they recognize of those behaviors. And I'll just enter the numbers. And now you can see it even jumps to 91% for the analyst. And then it is very interesting that the system has also very specific, two specific behaviors. We call them the deadly sin and the main virtue. This is basically the deadly sin is unwanted, undesired behavior, but that the people with that kind of brain think, oh, this is great. And the deadly of the main virtue is the opposite, where everybody thinks it is virtuous behavior, except people with that kind of brain, because they go, oh, no, I don't like it. Again, you can ask people how much they recognize, and this guy said the following. So now you can see the end result. Here's the personal. Is just as if you have a one-on-one interview that you can tweak it even a bit more. But the end result is 99% likely to be a type 5 analyst brain, and you can ignore the other numbers. So that has been quite nice. If you look at it in a bit more zoomed out, then it looks like this. And you can see that it is a very easy way to determine people's brain types or personality types. We actually validated this model with a group of 393 people, and there 95% of the people got the right brain type using this model, or the computer was able to calculate the right brain type. So it is by far the best tool out there to determine brain types in a reliable manner. But we have more, because once you know people's brain types, you can do something that is to look at the relationships. Let me see why there's not a blue. There's the blue one. All right, let's go back to 1, 1. They're probably overlapping because actually everything is the same. So that is the correct thing. But you can actually determine what the probability of success is of different brain types in a relationship. So I'll in the Dutch version, I did the relationship between my current partner and myself. Now that sounds like this is very recent, but we're already happy together for 20 years, and we will remain together for the rest of our lives. But this time I will do it with my ex-partner. The relationship broke up about 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, of course. So we'll look at this relationship. And my brain type is type 3, a successful worker. Her brain type was type 4, romantic. And so we have a couple of data points. That is how really stressed, relaxed, or neutral the partner A is. The same goes for partner B, of course, even though it says A, it should say B. Let's see if I can change it. Yes, so good. And this is very important because this is all based on cybernetic big five theory, and the definition of people having problems for cybernetic big five theory is that if you are structurally failing to achieve your goals, then you are in a lot of trouble. Whereas if you are structurally successful in your goals, then there's everything's going real well. Then there are different survival patterns. You have basically in the brain 3 patterns, which is either a group survival pattern where you want to stick with the group to ensure that you have the biggest chance to survive, or you are a loner. That basically you think that the group is too dangerous. I'm going to hide in a cave and hope that the danger passes by without finding me. And finally, you have what we call the one-on-one survival patterns. Those are very cynical people. They basically, think that you're basically you have no chance to survive stuff, and you need to survive through your children. And depending on what kind of brain type you have, what kind of pattern you have in your brain, relationships go easier or more difficult. Then we have these are very small factors, but whether you know the ABC NLP technology that I developed, if people do, then they're basically better at running their own brain. They have less issues with negative emotions, trauma, fears, worries about the future, and stuff like that. And the less you deal with those things, or the better you deal with those things, the easier relationships go. And the same goes for the neurogram type. If you know your neurogram types and you know how this influences relationships, then our relationships will go much better, of course. And then finally, we have the kind of relationship. We have three kinds. It's basically the romantic, intimate relationship, a private relationship, or a business relationship. So I already did three and four, so you can already see that yeah, the three is easier in relationships than a four. And so I'll do the end of our relationship. It was quite destructive, so neither of us were relaxed. We were both stressed. We neither did achieve our goals. And we do both have a survival pattern that is based on the cynical move of, well, as an individual, you have no chance, but if you, I say, yeah, procreate, then your children might have a chance. I am familiar with ABC and LP, of course. She isn't. And we both knew the system and we had a romantic relationship. So here you can see that according to the model, our relationship had a 17% chance of being a success. Well, of course, it failed, so that is quite right. And you can also see in the graph which partner gets the most out of the relationship. And here you can see that my ex-girlfriend got more out of the relationship than I did, which I also think is quite correct. So we have basically the individual, where you can determine brain types, partnerships, where you can see how two people interact, and then we actually have teams. Here I have a team of 24 psychotherapists and two junior managers and one senior manager. And then the first thing is, of course, part of the cybernetic big five theory is that we look at what's called the big two, or what I call the big two, and which is basically the highest abstract level of how we look at these, yeah, well, most people call it personality types, but in reality, these are evolutionary behavioral patterns. So here you can see that we actually do this for four different situations. What happens if the team is stressed? What happens if the team is neutral? What happens if the team is relaxed? And what's the current situation? Now you can see that it is quite well balanced. This team, of course, it's a big team of 27 people. So there's lots of reason why well, we would have almost all parts of the scheme within the team. You can see if you look at stress that then the team moves towards more innovative thinking. They want to find new goals. So in times of stress, the most people, they will move away from, for instance, relaxation there. That's the yellow part. Then they're looking at how can we be as efficient as possible. We have our current goals and we just want to run them, run the business as efficient as possible. But as soon as stress, if the team start to stress, then they start to stop trying to be efficient and they start looking for new goals. How can we change our way of doing things? Most likely so that we can stop the stress. Also, in all cases, so both in stress and the relaxed case, they will also have people who continuously try to create new goals. Might be a reason why they stress. But once they're neutral, then they're much more into social stuff, social behaviors, and now the group goals, the group goals of the whole team become more important. And finally, you can see in the green area what the current situation is, and you can see, well, they're quite in the middle of it. They are well, some of them are relaxed, some of them are neutral, and some of them are stressed. Then we can zoom in on these behaviors and moving to the big five. That is a lower level of abstraction. And you then can see again stress, neutral, relaxed, and the current situation. The blue area is the stressed area, and you can see that if they stress, they really move to open for reasoning and the detachment. And that is really also a way of looking at. So if you go back to the big two, we see they're trying to find new goals, be innovative in times of stress. But how do they do it? How are they trying to find new goals? Basically by reasoning. And you can see open for reasoning and detached. They detach from the real world. They start to explore their inner world and become very open for reasoning. And that's the way that they try to deal with their stress. They're basically trying to think their way out of the problems. If you look at the relaxed part, then you can see that it goes much more to agreeableness, which is basically, again, uh, acting in an agreeable way, which is easy for the social behavior. But also, in times of relaxation, they move towards extraversion. And extraversion is sensitivity to material rewards. So rather than being this detached thinker, it's much better if they become a bit more egoistic and ask themselves, what's in it for me? How can I profit from this situation? That sounds a bit, I say, counterintuitive, because this is a group of psychotherapists. But here you can see that for this team, it's quite good to actually become a lot more materialistic than they currently are. In the neutral state, they still have a lot of detachment and relaxation of reasoning, but they become also more open for experience, and especially that they become more social, as what we saw in the previous one also. But here we can also see that they lack conscientiousness. Now, one of the issues with the team, and this is a real team, by the way, this is real world cases. One of the issues with this team was that they were living from day to day and had no long-term goals, no long-term plans, no multiple year planning, stuff like that, none of that. So that is one of the things that we changed when we were uh, using this model to help them overcome the problems that they were dealing with. But you can see the lack of conscientiousness. Conscientiousness is protecting long-term goals against short-term impulses. And so you can see that this was a team what was quite impulsive and lived day by day, much to their determined, or I say it in English, much to their own negative situation. It created a negative situation, let's call it like it. And then we can even go to a lower level of abstraction. It was called the Big Ten. And there here you can see what other kinds of behaviors there are. Again, you can see in times of stress, they really go to the impulsive behavior. They become rebelling. They'll play the second fiddle. So they will not take initiative. They will lay back and wait till other people do. And they become unmoved. They harden in their feelings, and they just don't care anymore. Um, and that was actually quite the case, because you can see in the current situation that it is quite close to that. At least half of the team was quite in that mood. And that was also what was really happening, because there were lots of fightings, lots of discussions. The managers had no control over the therapists. There were lots of issues with this team. But they had to do with the rebelling second fiddle and moved. And again, you can look at the relaxed behaviors and you can see, okay, enthusiasm, that is where the team shines. That is where it makes them relax. And so feeling good, becoming assertive rather than playing the second fiddle, that is really what the team should be doing. And of course, yeah, this shows that very clearly, how you can teach it. You can also see that in the neutral state, there's also quite an addition of politeness and compassion. So that is also nice. So here you see how it works at three different levels for the behavioral, evolutionary behavioral patterns. We have the big two, the big five, and the big 10. And then we have further work from the cybernetic big five theory is the work of Professor Colin de Jong. You can look him up. He has great articles, very readable, and it's very interesting. But we're also looking into the works of a neuroscientist called Panksepp, and he has found that in the brainstem there are seven basic emotions, three negative emotions that are tied to also to negative consequences, and four positive emotions, basic emotions that are tied to positive consequences. And the way our brain works is that we really work based on what kind of consequences our behavior gets. So for that reason, it is really important to see how we deal of how different people with different brain types deal with these consequences, because this goes into how motivation works within people. So let's start with the negative consequences and the negative emotions. These are basically anger, fear, and sadness. Oftewel, how do you react to punishment? How do you react to penalties? And how do you react to threats? And you can see that in times of stress, this team really moves into fear, so they become fearful. Whereas in the neutral, then they have less dealing with fear, but there's more anger. And in their current situation, of course, this is only about the neutral and negative stuff. But in their current situation, you can see that they're actually moving quite towards sadness. And sadness should be interpreted here as what is called separation anxiety, and that is the fear that you are losing people. So in this case, yeah, the team was quite stressed and also quite fearful of losing the connections that they had built up with other people. And then there are also positive consequences, fortunately, and there are 4 positive consequences. That's basically social rewards, that is compliments, status, people who like you, material rewards, money, food, drink, whatever. Self-development. A lot of people really are into self-development, and leisure time. People also like to have the freedom to do what they want themselves. But you can see that where you would expect a group of therapists to score high on self-development, it's actually quite low. And you can see that, especially if they're relaxed, again, positive consequences only happen when people are either neutral or relaxed. So what we already saw with the Big Five is that material rewards is very important for this team. They relax when they are rewarded materially. And that's actually what we also found out. We did a lot of work with this team, and we found out that the way they wanted to be rewarded was by food. Now, food is a direct material reward, and so we have now a whole reward scheme for when they behave in a desired and wanted way. Then they can get a soup in the short term, or they can have a lunch together, or can have a barbecue. So we have introduced all kind of food rewards in this team, and that helps them immediately to relax. Well, that's exactly what is predicted by this model. Um, so again, and social rewards, we also trained the managers to use lots of compliments when they see desired behavior, that they can compliment the persons for the behaviors. And finally, we have whether the team is a problem maker or problem solver. And here you can see that, well, most of the team is into problem solving. There are about twice as many problem solvers as there are problem makers in the team. And but there are a bit more semi-problem makers and semi-problem solvers. A problem solver can also create problems, but a problem solver is willing to sweep problems under the rug and to actually compromise. Whereas a problem maker says, yeah, they can also solve problems, but they have red lines, and if those red lines are crossed, then they say, okay, now I'm no longer accepting any problems when this problem comes at the expense of either injustices or errors or the suppression of the underdog. So that is very interesting. You can see that this is quite a harmonious team, and it's also a pity that they were fighting that much, because normally if you have so many problem solvers, then the problems get solved. With semi-problem makers and semi-problem solvers, they're basically they're solving problems unless bad stuff happens. So the semi-problem maker is very easygoing as long as nothing goes wrong. But if things go wrong, then he or she may be pushed into a problem-making position. As the semi-problem solvers also solve stuff, but they have it the other way around. If there are conditions where they can get ahead themselves by making problems, then they will make problems. So in this case, the semi-problem makers and semi-problem solvers are also quite harmonious. And that's also why there was a lot of stress in this team, because the problem makers, even though they were a minority, were still capable of creating a lot of problems. And the problem solvers were unable to deal with those problems, and so that created a lot of stress. So there you have it. A very extensive tool to show you what kind of brain type an individual person has. As soon as you know at least 2 of them, then you can determine how the relationship is going. And once you have a big team and you know whether it is stress relaxed or neutral, then you can figure out how they function at a very high abstract level of the big two, at a less abstract level of the big five, or even lesser level, even more detailed level of the big 10. And you can see which consequences, both positive and negative consequences, work best for them. And you can see how they deal with problems. In short, a very good tool to use. So if you want to have this tool, or when you want to have this tool, then it is possible to get it, of course. If you go to the website influence.amsterdam/blog, then you find all the details of the tool, and there you can order the tool, and then you can run with it. It includes training programs, lots of documentation, the English translation of my bestseller here in the Netherlands, the Neurogram Handbook. And so if you want to use this tool, let me know, and then we'll make sure that you get the tool, get trained in using the tool, and get all the documentation necessary. So thank you for your attention, and hopefully we see each other soon when we teach you how to use this tool. Bye bye.